Hello and welcome back to This Week in Biotech weekly video summaries. Today I'm covering biotech and pharma news from June 20th to June 26th, 2025. I hope you're all having a great week and I'm glad you're back. So today, the first story we're going to cover is about the psychedelic sector. Compass Pathways became the first company ever to report positive phase 3 results for a classic psychedelic, showing that its psilocybin therapy COMP360 led to a statistically significant improvement in patients with treatment-resistant depression. The trial showed a 3.6-point improvement on the MADRS scale over placebo, but the catch is that investors were hoping for at least 4 to 5 points of separation between placebo and the treatment group. So instead of celebrating the milestone, the market punished Compass and shares crashed over 45% on Monday. And the damage didn't stop there. Atai Life Sciences, MindMed, Cybin, GH Research all saw steep declines as investors' confidence in the entire psychedelic sector took a hit. So even though the current administration is in favor of psychedelics, like the FDA Commissioner Martin Makary labeled psychedelics as a top priority for the Trump administration, RFK also supports psychedelic research fairly openly, and he's reportedly exploring vouchers and expanded trials for veterans. Surgeon General appointee Casey Means also shared personal advocacy for psilocybin therapy, but the Wall Street still cares mostly about trial outcomes, understandably, and Compass's 3.6-point MADRS gain was statistically significant, but again, investors anticipated a better outcome. And the disappointment also stems from the fact that Compass's next big data readout won't come until 2026 and regulatory timelines are still murky. So while the science is interesting and there are some statistically significant results, the path to commercial success for psychedelics, especially the classical psychedelics like psilocybin, might be a little bit longer than many had hoped. Next is KalVista's FDA delay drama. So KalVista was on the cusp of a major win. Its drug sebetralstat, an oral on-demand treatment for hereditary angioedema, was expected to become the first of its kind, offering patients a fast, convenient alternative to injections. But on June 17th, the FDA missed its own approval deadline, the PDUFA. Officially, the agency blamed the delay on a heavy workload and limited resources, but unofficially, it got more interesting. So according to reports, the FDA Commissioner Martin Makary made a last-minute push to reject the drug. But the move was blocked internally by senior FDA scientists who feared the legal blowback of rejecting a drug that had, by all accounts, cleared the scientific bar. So the company insists that only final labeling is under review and no new data has been requested by the FDA, but still, this drama raised eyebrows and KalVista's stock slipped nearly 7% as investors absorbed this uncertainty. Next, we have some news from gene editing therapies. Sangamo Therapeutics is back in the spotlight after posting promising results for its gene therapy targeting Fabry disease, which is a rare inherited disorder that typically requires lifelong enzyme infusions. In the phase 1/2 START trial, a single dose of Sangamo's therapy, ST-920, also known by its tongue twister generic name that I'm not going to try to pronounce and put it right here, did something remarkable. It improved kidney function, showing a positive eGFR slope of nearly 2 points per year, while standard treatments like Fabrazyme or Galafold usually can't stop the decline. And what's even more impressive is that every patient who had been on chronic enzyme replacement therapy was taken off the treatment and stayed off throughout the trial. And the FDA has agreed that eGFR slope is a valid endpoint for accelerated approval. There were also gains in quality of life and disease severity scores with no new safety concerns. Sangamo is aiming to file for approval in early 2026 and is now on the hunt for a commercial partner to help bring this one-time therapy to market. Our next big mover this week was Altimmune. Its highly anticipated drug pemvidutide was riding high after delivering impressive phase 2b data in its IMPACT trial for MASH, or metabolic dysfunction associated steatohepatitis. But when the stock dropped over 60% pre-market, it became a stark reminder that even standout results aren't bulletproof. So pemvidutide achieved MASH resolution, 59.1% of patients on the therapy had biopsy-confirmed MASH resolution without worsening fibrosis versus just 19.1% on placebo. They also experienced weight loss and decreased liver fat, so patients lost up to 6.2% of body weight with no plateau at 24 weeks, and liver fat dropped by about 60%. Fewer than 1.2% discontinued due to side effects, and there are no serious adverse events. But the fibrosis improvement endpoint didn't hit significance. And even though they did a supplemental AI analysis, which showed that almost 31% of the high dose group hit more than a 60% fibrosis reduction compared to only a little bit over 8% on placebo, which is a promising sign, but it was not enough to counterbalance that lack of statistical significance for the fibrosis improvement. And investors reacted sharply. Shares opened down about 60% pre-market, and this was close to their 52-week lows. But I think there's still future for pemvidutide. It has strong clinical profile with the MASH resolution rates, weight loss, tolerability. These are all top tier for 24-week data. There's an FDA interaction ahead. Altimmune is planning an end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA in late 2025 to map out pathways to phase 3. And there's also a big unmet need with MASH affecting millions, and those people are lacking approved therapies. Pemvidutide remains a potential game changer if it can nail the fibrosis endpoints in a longer trial. I also have some regulatory updates. First one is the CDC panel voted for thimerosal-free flu shots. So yesterday on June 26th, the revamped CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted 5-1 to recommend all flu shots for adults, pregnant women, and young children to be thimerosal-free single-dose formulations. So why now? Presentation by a vocal anti-vaccine advocate labeled thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative still found in multi-dose vials, as a neurotoxin. Despite no credible evidence linking it to harm, especially autism, the panel sided with caution. The CDC itself continues to affirm that thimerosal use doses are safe, apart from minor injection site reactions, and actually thimerosal flu injections are no longer used in pediatric populations. But now it's also recommended that all the other flu shots don't contain this preservative. So this vote underscored RFK Jr.'s growing influence over federal vaccine policy and raises concern among public health experts that political pressure may be overshadowing scientific consensus in national immunization decisions. So the second regulatory update is about CDC nominee Susan Monares. She's President Trump's nominee for the CDC director and appeared this week before the Senate, affirming her support for vaccines. She stated clearly, quote, "I have not seen a causal link between vaccines and autism," unquote, and emphasized that vaccines save lives. This marks a clear divergence from RFK Jr.'s vaccine skepticism and agenda. Monares framed her stance as evidence-based and science-driven, and distance herself from Kennedy's controversial direction. All right, that's it for today. There's a lot more information in edition 58 on Substack that you can read, and I'll be back next week. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great weekend.